Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for. A very important piece to Kalen DeBoer's first coaching staff got quite a significant raise. Wasn't offensive coordinator Nick Sheridan. Wasn't defensive coordinator Kane Womack. Wasn't any position coach. Wasn't even someone that is going to run a single drill at a single practice for Alabama this year. Instead, it was a gentleman by the name of Courtney Morgan, Alabama football's GM, their general manager. Well, on Monday night, Courtney Morgan got a raise and an extension, by the way, before Alabama has even played a game in the Kalen DeBoer era, as he is now set to make well over $800,000 as Alabama's GM, off the field role, player personnel, nothing to do with coaching. But the bottom line is this. If you want to talk about the new era of college football and college sports that we're entering, I'm here to tell you, this is like a flashing red light, important moment in time for college sports. Courtney Morgan, Alabama's GM, officially the highest paid player personnel guy. Don't think it's slowing down, but credit to Alabama for getting this done. Because again, even though they haven't played a game, they have the number 2 recruiting class in the country. And this guy was hotly pursued by USC, who's trying to hire him for a very similar role. But again, I think it speaks to the fact that we got a GM now making close to $1 million. It shows you where we're headed in college football. What I want to do, spend just a few minutes talking about this and really explain who this guy is and really explain what the GM actually does in college football. Because I think there's this perception about the job that I don't think necessarily matches reality. By the way, we're actually, there's a GM of a Power 4 program that I'm pretty close with. I'm going to try to get on here in the next few weeks just to explain what the job is. But first off, who is Courtney Morgan? Okay. So Courtney Morgan is, in my opinion, I believe to be one of the best, and at the very least, certainly most well-respected player personnel guys in all of college football. Okay. He was a guy that was at Michigan about 4 or 5 years ago, right as Harbaugh really got things rolling. He was the guy that helped put together that roster, certainly played a role. You know, I think even if you ask him, he doesn't want to take too much credit. It's Jim Harbaugh, it's Sharon Moore, it's some of the other assistant coaches. But he was kind of the guy that was in charge of player personnel. Then Kalen DeBoer gets the Washington job. He follows Kalen DeBoer to Washington, helps them build a team that's good enough to compete for a national championship last year. And this was actually a little bit of a story going into the title game. How this gentleman had his hands in player personnel and helping build the roster at Michigan and Washington, the 2 teams that played for the national championship. Where I think he kind of came into focus, though, was just actually a few days later when Nick Saban retired and Kalen DeBoer took the Alabama coaching job. And at the time, I remember talking about this, and I don't know if anybody else would remember, but when Kalen DeBoer officially accepted the Alabama job, there was only one person from Washington, from Seattle, that got on the plane with him coming from the Washington job to Alabama. Again, it wasn't the OC, wasn't the DC, wasn't the special teams coordinator, wasn't the passing game coordinator. It was Courtney Morgan, his player personnel guy. So it shows you the value that Kalen DeBoer had, what Kalen DeBoer saw in Courtney Morgan's value. And it shows you the increasing value of the GM role in college football. Now, again, to be clear, I think this job's probably a little bit different than a lot of people think. And what I want to do is just dive into what the GM does, because it's probably a little bit different than the NFL. I think in the NFL, people think that, or they don't think it is, the GM's the guy that scouts, that evaluates, that drafts, that signs free agents, that handles money, that negotiates contracts. It ain't like that in college football, at least certainly not at some of these high-profile schools. At Alabama, like Courtney Morgan, in my opinion, and this is why he's so good, and I'm going to fully explain, guy wears a lot of hats, okay? First of all, he's in charge of player personnel. And even that role in the last 4 or 5 years has taken on a completely different role and responsibility. Used to be, you know how it was. You don't need me to tell you, but it was, you'd invite a couple hundred kids to summer camp. You work them out. You offer 75 of them. You hope 25 of them commit. Boom, there's your recruiting class. And I'm being a little facetious. It's obviously was more complicated than that. But it was mostly just evaluating high school players, watching junior tape, watching senior tape, getting ahead on the younger classes, putting out offers, whatever. Well, this portal thing has completely changed everything. And that's why you see these player personnel staffs increasingly getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, to the point that you have the Florida coaching staff that has 1,000 people on it. It's not 1,000, but it is literally like 200 people. Is because you're not just evaluating high school seniors or high school juniors, but you're doing all that while also having your finger on the pulse of the portal. And understand, portal recruiting doesn't start the day the portal opens. And where somebody like Courtney Morgan, where these player personnel guys come in, is that they're just kind of keeping their finger on the pulse of pretty much everything that even could happen during portal season. So let's say Jimbo Fisher gets fired. Okay, well, we got to start figuring out, okay, who from Texas A&M is probably going to enter the portal? Who's probably going to stay? Okay, that kid's dad was a player at A&M, so he's probably not going to leave. He's going to stay. What happens if Mike Elko takes the, there's just so many variables that go into it. Okay, who are the FCS All-Americans that have the extra year of COVID eligibility that may want to get out? Who are the guys in the Ivy Leagues that are going to graduate with that degree from Harvard or Yale that are good enough to play at our level? By the way, who are the guys that are not good enough to play at our levels? And here's the key too. Not all these guys enter the portal, but you have to be ready for everything. You have to be prepared. You have to know who's good enough. You have to know who's not. But more importantly, and this is where I think a guy like Courtney Morgan doesn't get enough credit, and we need to make sure to give him credit. It's about the relationships and the contacts within the industry that you have to get the players to even consider your school, let alone get them to commit. And at the end of the day, listen, I know we talk about NIL nonstop in this world that we live in college sports, but at the same time, to me, it's actually much more complicated than that, okay? Because listen, if you're being recruited by Alabama, it means you're also being recruited by Ohio State and Oregon and Tennessee and Texas A&M and whoever. And it means that wherever you go, NIL is going to be there. And so really what it is about having those relationships so that, one, you can get in the door, but two, the student athlete, whether he's a transfer, whether he's a high school player, whether he's whatever, he knows if I go there, hey, if I'm in the portal, I got 2 weeks to make a decision. I got to go. Where can I go that I know I'm going to be in good hands? And so whether it's the high school coach, the 7-on-7 coach in basketball, it's obviously the AAU coach. Is it a parent? Is it an uncle? Who are the people that have influence, and what are your relationships with them? And so where a guy like Courtney Morgan is so valuable, I think everybody's, Bama or Oregon, they're just dropping bags. That's all recruiting. No, it's not. And that's where a guy like this comes in, is if there is a 5-star, who does he have the relationship with? Do you know him? How do we get to know him? Where is he based out of? Is it a trainer that has his ear? Is it a high school coach that has his ear? And then whoever it is, do we have a good relationship with them? Can we get this kid to pick up our phone call? Can we get this kid to visit campus? Can we get this kid to commit? Does he want to commit on site? Does he want, these are all things that go into the process. And as a matter of fact, a lot of these general managers, they're not even the ones dealing with the money. It's you get them to campus, you do whatever, then you bring in the collective to kind of help. The collective kind of handles all the money part. Now, you might have an idea, you might have an understanding of what the number the player expects is, but at the end of the day, that's not what a GM does. And so that's why I just want to give Courtney Morgan credit, because he is a guy that in a short amount of time, I think he's about 31, 32 years old, he has built this wide-ranging web of relationships, and that is so important in this world. By the way, want to know why Kalen DeBoer is having so much success? Want to know why they have the number 2 recruiting class in the country? I'm not saying it's not a group effort. I'm not saying Kalen DeBoer doesn't play a role and assistant coaches don't play a role and recruiters on the road don't play a role, but it all starts with the relationship of the GM of Courtney Morgan. So one, credit to this guy because he's clearly great at what he does. Built 2 national championship caliber rosters at Washington and Michigan, helped build them. Comes to Alabama, they're immediately recruiting at an elite level. And no, it's not just NIL fans of other schools. I'm sorry if that hurts your feelings, but it's not just all about NIL. But then credit Alabama, because Alabama, listen, I respect the heck out of what Greg Byrne does down there. I respect the heck out of what Nick Saban built and what Kalen DeBoer is continuing to help evolve and develop. Is that at Alabama, they don't take a backseat to anybody. And you talk to people in college football behind the scenes, they will tell you just how important this guy is to what Alabama has done, to what all of these schools have done, and how crippling it would have been for Alabama to lose him. So Alabama keeps their general manager, Courtney Morgan. He is now making close to over $800,000. And it shows you just how much the player personnel world of college sports has evolved and just how important a role like this is.